Today I'm going to be addressing how I got this tank to go from this to this in just over a month. Hello everyone, I am Talisa with Talisa Aquarist. Thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm going to tell you guys what my favorite fertilizer is for the plants in my planted aquariums. So I set this 40-gallon tank up exactly 6 weeks ago today actually. And as you can see, the plants are doing very well. The water lettuce has roots just growing like crazy. The Rotala back here is growing so fast. The moss is just exploding in growth. And this sword plant right here is just growing like crazy. It has a leaf coming up out of the water and it's not like dry filling, it's not dying. I've not ever had that happen before, so I think that's pretty cool. There was a lot more floaters up here, but I removed them because like the tank was way too dark and I wanted to be able to see into the tank well today for filming. It's still a little bit dark because there's still quite a bit of floaters up here, but it is better. Now I do have potting soil underneath the sand in this tank. This is a dirted tank. However, that is not my favorite fertilizer that I will be talking about today. My favorite fertilizer, believe it or not, is goldfish poop. Goldfish poop has always managed to get the most growth out of plants, at least for me. I don't know what type of fertilizers you guys use. I'm not a fan of liquid fertilizers, I'm not a fan of root tabs, I'm not a fan of CO2 or anything like that. I like keeping things super simple. However, if you put a goldfish in a planted aquarium to jumpstart a tank, that tank will just get a huge jump start. The plants will grow like crazy, and that tank will thrive for years even after you remove the goldfish from the tank and add other fish. Now this 40-gallon tank is not a permanent home for squid, my goldfish. As you can see, the hardscape is just not very appropriate for a goldfish, especially once he gets bigger. However, he is doing me a huge service by jump starting this tank for me. This sand is getting a lot of nutrients in it from the fish waste produced by squid, my goldfish. The plants are growing out of control, and even once I get him a larger tank and add him to a larger tank, this tank will continue to thrive, especially since it's dirted. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a story time here and tell you guys how I discovered the benefits of goldfish poop in planted aquariums. So a few years back, I bought my first goldfish. She was a little baby goldfish, much smaller than squid is now. And she was just adorable. She was very much an impulse buy, but I had read that goldfish needed a minimum, like for one goldfish, they needed 30 gallons. So I think I already had a 29-gallon tank. Yes, I had bought a 29-gallon tank and I just hadn't set it up yet. And so I decided that I was going to set this 29-gallon tank up for one baby goldfish, and I was going to have it planted and everything. And this was back before I really knew how to set up planted aquariums. I would just dump a bunch of gravel in and add plants. And as you can imagine, the plants would struggle to survive for at least a year. And then I would get enough bacteria built up in that gravel that the plants would actually start catching on and rooting in better, and they would start picking up. But it would take so long to have really hardly any plant growth in a tank because I used gravel and had no root tabs or anything for the plants. But I added this little goldfish in the tank, and the plants did much better in that tank, even though there was just gravel in this tank. And then she got bigger and she started eating all the plants, and then she got so big that she was just too big for the 29-gallon tank. She was producing enough waste that even with a filter on the tank, I needed to do water changes like twice a week to even be able to stay on top of how much waste she was producing. Now I probably could have gotten away with just doing like one big water change a week, but I wasn't doing that because I didn't want to like shock her or something. I didn't really know how to care for goldfish, right? So I decided to rehome her, and I actually rehomed her to someone local. I should reach out to them and see how she's doing actually. But I rehomed her to someone local, and when I got rid of her, I kept the same gravel in the tank and everything, and I just added plants back into that aquarium and just put some smaller like tetras in the tank. And those plants, I noticed, were growing at a much quicker rate than all the other plants in my other aquariums that I had that were all just gravel. And they were thriving, and I realized it was because of all of the waste in the gravel produced by my goldfish. She had lived in it for about a year, I think, and those plants thrived, even just in gravel. And that was when I realized the benefits of having a lot of waste in an aquarium. You know, not so much that there's a huge ammonia spike, but my plants did well even in gravel, which, you know, plants don't typically do all that well in gravel unless there's a lot of waste in the gravel. You know, now I have dirted tanks to provide all the nutrients that my plants need from the roots. However, by adding a goldfish to the tank, it also adds a lot of nutrients to the water column for my plants that also take in nutrients from the water column and not just from the root system. And so my plants are just being very fertilized right now. So I'm going to end this video with just a little tip for you guys. If you've been wanting to set up a planted aquarium but you hate sand and you hate dirted tanks, or you don't know enough about dirted tanks to set one up, you don't want to do that, you can use gravel and have very successful, thriving planted tanks. I would suggest getting a 20 gallon, 40 gallon, 60 gallon, any type of tank, as long as it's 20 gallons or bigger. Get it set up, add the gravel, don't add plants or anything, just the gravel and the filter, and put a little baby goldfish in there. Or if it's 60 gallons, you know, maybe add 5 baby goldfish in there and let them grow out for a few months. Do regular water changes, feed them well, let them grow out for a few months, and then bring them to your local fish store and trade them in for some plants. And bring those plants home and plunk them in that gravel, and your plants will take off like crazy. And they should do very well for years to come. Just make sure you don't gravel vac the tank. You shouldn't need to gravel vac all the time unless there's like a bunch of mold up above the gravel even. Even then you probably don't need a gravel vac. But, you know, just make sure you're not sucking all of the waste out of the gravel, because otherwise adding goldfish to the tank is not going to be very effective in growing plants, right? So that's just a fun little tip that some of you guys may find helpful, especially for those wanting to start up a planted tank. Goldfish are great. I would say, now I haven't used CO2, but I would say it's much easier and probably as effective as CO2. Now I can't say that for sure, but I have seen other professionals using CO2 that get great growth out of their plants, but I don't know that it's more than what I've gotten in 6 weeks with a goldfish. Now keep in mind, the goldfish, I added him like 3 weeks ago or something. It hasn't been very long since I added him. He wasn't in there from the beginning, you know, and I still got this much growth. Obviously, it's also because of the potting soil I have below, but if you just have gravel and add some goldfish in, you will be able to really get a lot of growth out of your plants. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching this video.